Rahul, brother, thank you so much for being here today. The whole idea of
Mhm.
these short videos is 25 to 35 minutes of just casual chats between two friends. And I'd hope that for the people who are watching this, they'll maybe learn something new that you have to share. Maybe we can start by just kind of talking a little bit about how you and I met each other. It's a very interesting story.
Yes, it is. As far as I remember, I had come to Delhi, uh, NCR in general, for meeting with a friend of mine. And after spending a good 7 days, I was on my way back. So this was around the time I was studying in Malaysia for my undergrad. And yes, we were on the flight to KL. That is where I happened to sit beside you. And for the love of God, I don't remember who started the conversation, but I remember like us just getting along very well. And you were going back to Australia if I remember correctly, right? And yeah, man, we connected on kickboxing, hiking, and Hamza of all the people. So
Yeah.
quite a nice memory, if anything.
And also, I think we were talking about a little bit about football, right?
Yes, a little bit about football, yes.
So it's really interesting, yeah, because I was in India for a holiday and then I was going back to Australia. I remember going via Malaysia.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, that India to Malaysia leg, I saw you. We became good friends. We're like roughly the same age and we really hit it off. I feel like the flight
Yes,
went by really fast because I had good company. And that's the beautiful thing about
yes.
having starting conversations with strangers. It
Um,
and we met I think almost what 2 years ago? Yeah.
Yes, it has been 3 years, right? If you think of it,
Time
like I
flies.
still vividly remember like me being a bit scared because of the turbulence, and then that was the first time that you had taught me about, how to check the safety ratings, how it works, and how to just have some trust on some of the ratings. And I was like, okay, cool. This guy knows what he's talking about,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, being freaked out of turbulence is very normal. I've always been freaked out, but yeah, planes are like by far the safest mode of transport and turbulence is very normal. So I wanted to like
Mhm.
reassure you. I think what would be maybe an interesting thing to maybe talk about a little bit is you studied in Malaysia and UK. Maybe you can talk a
Yes.
little bit about your experience there, how it was, what prompted you to study in these two countries.
Yeah, man. Talking of my background, my grandparents as well as both my parents come from the medical background. So I had a little bit of interest in medicine in general, but I think you have some experience of, back in India, how uh, what the situation, what the environment is like.
Mm.
And somewhere along the lines, I had seen my parents not struggling, but being very encapsulated in their work, right? And they're very dedicated. Like they would wake up at 3 a.m. and go for their work. And I didn't know a lot about myself, but all I knew is that I can't be as good as them. And they set a benchmark that I couldn't, ever replicate. So that led to me wanting to try something different but something related. And that's when I came on board of studying this subject called biomedical sciences, which is very similar, but in the research, it's more of a behind the scenes thing. So while looking for that, India didn't have much scope for it for at least undergrad. And that's when I started applying to the US, the UK, and I got a good few offers. But there I was looking for the financial incentive, and that led to me receiving an offer from Newcastle in UK about how they had a sister campus in Malaysia, and then they told me that I could study undergrad there, where it would be 2 years in Malaysia and the final year in the UK. And given the financial incentive, it was quite enticing. And at the end, I ended up choosing it because the better it is for my parents, the better is it for me. It is for me, right? So that happened. And the second reason would be that I had never been out of India apart from Bhutan, which happens to be near my place. But other than that, I had never been outside India, so it was my first time. And the fact that I would get to experience to other countries, to other cultures in a span of 3 years, right? So I was like, why not? And that led to me choosing it. It was during the COVID times though, so uh, not the typical touristy thing, but quite an experience nonetheless, honestly.
That's amazing. What was the UK like though? Was it like people say? Was it like a little cloudy and gloomy, or did you have a good experience there overall?
Honestly, man, I do think it is cloudy, first thing, because it rained the day I landed there. It rained the next 10 days. I remember it vividly, and it was cold, bone-chillingly cold. And this was back in September itself. We hadn't even entered November. But the thing again is that I come from the northeast of India, which is in the higher hills, and if anything, it's also called as the Scotland of India. So for very apt reasons, because it's the same cloudy thing, it's partly sunny and it's cold again.
Mm,
So adjusting to that kind of weather wasn't at all difficult for me. But apart from that, the second thing would be that it's not as cloudy as people say. There's this very Victorian like setting that people have of England in general, right? But I would say that isn't the case. I like a little bit of photography myself. So whenever I have managed to click photos, like there have been sunny days, and like it's the kind of setting that you would like to just sit, right? And of course, people wouldn't like to sit in a cold place. So I think that speaks for itself. And that's the thing, man. Setting in terms of environment and culture was this, like it was similar. And Newcastle happens to be in the north. There is this belief that the further you go up the north of England, the warmer people are. In the southern parts like London and all, people are very brash, you know. Almost, of course, I think it has a thing with the I would say the culture in general, because
mm,
I can't really describe it, but there is this more familial thing, and the setting is a bit more rural, so they have this community vibe to it in the north. So I lived in Newcastle because of that. People were very warm. I remember missing my bus to the university almost every 3 days. And so that would lead to me just sitting in and waiting in the bus stop. And I would have this conversation with the locals, and they were very nice. So overall, a very nice experience, to be honest.
really. And is there any day that stood out to you the most while you were in the UK? Any one day that you think you really have in your memory ingrained, a very positive day that you'd like to share?
You had mentioned football, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So the thing is, I play football quite a lot. It's the only sport I can play, and I remember us having that conversation, right? So uh, I attended my first professional football match, and that to the UCL match. It was against a German team, Dortmund, and the Newcastle United team. So I had collected enough money, and partly from my part-time job, and partly like things that my parents sent. So I collected it, and I had paid for the ticket. And again, because it was also my first time watching a professional match, and the fact that for us football fans it's a very big deal. And I have experienced, like people really, being into the football scene, but watching a 70,000 capacity stadium being filled to the brim, and, people just chanting, shouting, getting up for the anthems and all was that was the highlight, I would say, and something I can just go back for if I had the money.
Yeah. The atmosphere is incredible for any live event, whether it's a
Uh,
concert, whether it's a cricket match, wherever it is, the atmosphere is just incredible. Like you can't even
yeah.
compare it to actually watching something on TV. That kind of brings me to something you were mentioning. You were saying you had a part-time job. What kind of part-time work were you doing?
I was working in a grocery store. So, Tesco, right?
Oh, of
So I
course,
was
Tesco. Yeah.
working, yeah, yeah. So I was working in the nearby Tesco for a month. Uh, I happened to have a very far off relative who stayed there. So through her connection, I was able to work. So it was just for a month though, because I did not want to, I was scared that I would mess up my academics. So I was very cautious about it. But once my final exams had ended, there was another one similar to Tesco called Asda, and that too was nearby my accommodation. So after my exams were done, I was able to put up more time there. So, more or less that was the part-time job. And you might have had some experience because the culture is very similar there in Australia as well, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like my fellow uh, students, right, who had come, not course mates exactly, seniors maybe who had come. Half of them were had a similar mindset as me of wanting to work, but the other half were the conservative one, I would say, where they thought that, it was a bit below them. And then, they were like, what kind of work is this? Like, why will I be, filing bills, stocking up shelves? Why would we do that? So that was very interesting to see because I could see like, the mindset back until class 12 versus, when undergrad started. So it was like this very stark difference. And I would say not, like making any of those, either of those look bad. There were positives and negatives to both. So I was able to understand all those, so just take it in. So it was kind of like that.
That's pretty fantastic. I think when you have a part-time job, you're really growing a lot. And it's like the first time it actually teaches you about kind of like respecting money in a way because it's your own money, right? When I got my first
Yeah.
part-time job, I was doing maintenance, fixing doors and ACs. It really made me
Uh-uh.
appreciate the value of money in a way because I
Yeah.
was working for it. And I feel like you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're spending the money you earn, you're much more careful with it, but you also appreciate it, right?
Yes, yes. It's like uh, every cent you spend, you go like, okay, there goes an hour of my stuff. There goes 2 hours of my stuff. Mm-hmm. And you also learn a lot, right? Like I'm sure like at the very start of, you working, you hadn't learned that much, but as time went on, it was like you're polishing that skill of yours, right? I think so.
Exactly.
So you can of course like, transfer it somewhere else. And I think that is a very big learning. That is a skill in itself, right? Being able to transfer a
Yeah,
skill
for sure.
is a skill in itself. So did you have a nice time though?
Yeah, for sure. And I
For
feel
sure,
like
right?
it's like a knife you're sharpening, right? Whatever experience you're kind of engaging in, like you're saying, it's gonna get you onto the next place. It's gonna make you the
Yeah,
person you need to be. And actually, you said something very profound. The ability to transfer a skill from one silo to another is actually a skill in itself. I didn't even consider that, but actually, that's quite profound.
yeah. Agreed, man. Agreed.
And what
Like,
are you doing right now? Like, where are you currently?
so I'm back, actually back in India.
Mm.
I'm in my hometown right now because it was my grandfather's death anniversary, and I have my mom's birthday coming up. So it's actually tomorrow. So I was just supposed to stay here for a week, but I ended up staying for two. So I'll be going back on the 16th, and I'll be going back to this is a town, so I'll be going to the main city because that's where my home is. And I came back to India. Uh, Initially, my academics weren't the best this time around, so I actually had gotten two paid internships back in the UK. And as an international student, we were given uh, the visa that, the work visa, right? But we could only avail it once in a career. So I just wanted to keep it safe. What happens if I've just completed my bachelor's? What if I want to do my master's further in the UK? What if UK happens to be the place and I have to utilize the, work visa, right? So I wanted to keep it for some later time. So I came back to India and currently I'm preparing for a few entrance exams. I'm sure you're familiar with, how entrance exams here go. So I'm thinking of pursuing a master's in science.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, science. I would like to complete that loop,
Yeah.
Call me conservative, but since I've started, I would like to improve and I would like to just finish it. And, I would just like to gain some experience because you know partly about it because 3 years back when we met on the plane, I was telling you how the experience was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wouldn't like to judge the whole subject based off that one experience, right? There's so many things that go into it. So it's think of it as a second attempt, and I want to give a more proper attempt. So that's why I think the date is on February 11th.
Okay.
So I have an exam then I'll be giving. Hopefully, if I do happen to make it up alive, and like flying colors somewhat, I will be pursuing my master's starting September of 2025. After that, it's 2 years and hopefully Australia as well someday.
Wow. So is that where you're considering going for masters or?
No, no. I'll be finishing the Masters in Science here. It's for a period of 2 years, but after that, it also depends on, where you are doing it from, right? Like if
Yeah.
it's a very science-based institute you're doing it from, it opens up more doors. So I've had two friends of mine who used to study a similar subject. So they're from IIT Delhi. So they were studying biotechnology there. And after that, they went to University of, I think it's New South Wales.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I correct? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So they were, I think, a research assistant or, your research students there. And there was some sort of a collab or, it just opens up more doors is what I've heard. And again, not more for, like the institute or the name of the institute, but more for the interest of the subject, right? And of course, interest of the place. Uh, if doors like that are open, then that always means there's more opportunity for someone like me. So my hope of, preparing for this entrance is that this is my first step, into the world of, whatever it is. So those are my hopes, man.
That's pretty fantastic and quite ambitious, I have to say. So these are like, your I guess your near future goals. Do you have any longer term goals after this? Have you thought that far or?
Somewhat, man. Like growing up, I would say, as I told you, right, hadn't been outside much, and my parents aren't, like conservative or like very strict or anything. But in terms of life, I hadn't experienced it much. Undergrad was the first year, and I just don't mean academics. I mean like overall, and people call it adulting, I guess, but it's some experience. So every year, the thing is, aspirations change, and I learn a few new things. Overall, though, it might sound big, given like how now I'm aware that things will change every year. By when I'm 26, 27, I would like to have at least a job, that's stable, that can support. And I'm not really sure if, it'll be because at 25 or 26, I will have to make a call if it's going to be outside India or in India. So that's a call. Uh, I would like to, but experience, like what the rest of the world is like. Not be a very irritating person, and stay over and stuff. But work, get some work experience, not irritate people, learn
Ah,
about new cultures, new
yeah, yeah.
places, and hopefully, come back home.
Yeah. Learning about cultures and places, I think it really molds you into the person you need to be. It gives you perspective and ideas on different beliefs. And it really, like, once again, molds your perspective. And speaking of cultures and places, I thought it might be useful to maybe kind of like talk a little bit about where you're from in India. A lot of people
Oh my God.
know, the general India, Delhi, Taj Mahal and stuff, but they don't know much about, unfortunately, your area of India. So it'll be lovely if you could talk a little bit about it. What kind of culture there is over there and what people normally do. Like, what do you normally do in your free time while you're there?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the elephant in the room, isn't it? Like I'm sure, like the few people who will watch this, they'll go like, "How's his name, Rahul?" But he doesn't look like a Rahul. So I come from the northeast of India. So it borders India, China, Bhutan, and Myanmar. So it's this really small part in the eastern side of India that people don't even notice, right? Like I said, it's very hilly, it's cold, it's chill. It's 6 degrees, right now in mid-December, so it's quite chilly. I would say it's a bit in underdeveloped infrastructure-wise, but I would say that uh, people here, the culture is just so different, right? Like for me and for all of us here, there's 7 states, and each of us have a distinct culture, a distinct language. But one thing that's common is that all of us have English as a preferred language of communication. We also know a mother tongue, and it's given much more importance because India is a very populous country, right? But
Yeah,
the 7 states that's in the northeast that comprises merely 1% of or 5% of the population, which isn't a lot. So there's very few of us. So keeping our culture alive through, oral traditions and, spoken language is the way to go. That's the first thing. Second thing is somehow, like people are a lot more into sports. Like if you look at the Indian football team, the boxing area, or the one that you like, MMA and all.
Yeah.
Majority of, all the sports persons, they come from the Northeast. So I would say that we are a sports powerhouse.
Mhm.
A few of us that aren't sports powerhouse, they happen to do well academically, or happen to do good things. That's the second thing. We have a relatively chill life where I've been to Delhi. Like, I myself was born in Chandigarh, which is in Punjab, right?
Yeah.
My mom dad used to study there. I would say in comparison to that, it's a bit more chill life. You get that normal 9 to 5 thing, and then during the break, people are walking, people are enjoying nature. Like, if I show you the view from my window right now, it's just hills and hills and hills. So I would say, actually, like, it's the kind of thing that you would really like. Like, I remember us talking about things, right? And I never mentioned it to you, but I mentioned you mentioned that you like hiking,
I love
going
hiking.
around and just
Nature.
exploring cultures and all. So yeah, yeah, man, we love this place. December also happens to be one of the more celebratory moments in this part of the country. So we recently had Brian Adams perform.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had Brian Adams perform, I think yesterday, and he went to Gurgaon, which is your place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have had that. We have a cherry blossom festival that happens every year. We also have, like just bands coming in. And I had recently heard that Ed is coming on the 12th of February.
To,
Yes,
to, to your state.
man. Yeah, 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 the Shillong.
Wow. So what language
So,
do they speak there in Shillong?
uh, Shillong is in a state called Meghalaya, and
Right.
Meghalaya comprises of 3 hills. So, uh, each hill has their own language. The thing is, I half of my family belongs from one of the hills, and I lived in the second of the hills, and the capital is the third one. So it's quite diverse. But yeah, in terms of my family's background, it's my father's mother, so my paternal grandmother, who's from that side. So that's even more cool, I would say. So they're very much into rock. They're very much into the music scene, and like it's also famous for waterfalls, this that, and if I'm not wrong, in my grandmom's hometown, right, is where there's like a few couple of monoliths. And as far as I read, monoliths are considered to be pretty prehistoric, right, as far as, you know,
Mhm.
dating them goes. So overall, it's like that, man. Underdeveloped in terms of infrastructure, but a kind of place where if you love life, then a very nice place to be. Unfortunately, I like the city, vibe, the city lifestyle a bit more.
Mhm.
And like you've known me, right? Like the conversation we've had. So I would like to, work my ass off, enjoy what Gurgaon has to offer because again, for people here, the few of us who do dream, for us, NCR, Bangalore, Mumbai, outside. So that's the dream.
Yeah.
And maybe come back when we're older. So we always have this connect with our hometowns and our home places, but we would just like to experience every place we go. And I mean, like, if we meet people as nice as you, because I don't really converse much with people, right? Let alone in airplanes, like in general. So the fact that
Yeah.
you and I could connect and just have a conversation that was quite proper, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that just made me think that, okay, people are genuinely quite nice. So yeah, man. But overall, like I know this is a podcast and whatever, but this is a genuine invitation. Next time you are here, if you're here in November, December, I will be your host and you please come and enjoy the place. You'll love it.
Brother, thank you so much. You're very, very kind. Firstly, with your praise, I think you're giving me more credit than I deserve. But also going back to,
You really deserve it.
thanks, brother. Going back to also the Northeast, what you're saying. Do have a friend from the Northeast, and she's always posting pictures, and it looks stunning. The nature, it's
Yeah,
picturesque.
picture.
And the hills. I mean, it's perfect hiking location. The waterfalls, it's stunning. You actually can't believe it's India. Um, so truly, I do want to visit, and I would love to take you up on that offer. I'd love to be hosted by you. And same for me. If you're ever in NCR, please, you're welcome to come. Um, you said that Northeast, it's a bit of a humble, simple place. But obviously, if you have Brian Adams coming, Ed Sheeran coming, I think it's picking up. So maybe you don't need to go to the city. Maybe Northeast is going to become the new city.
Yeah, man, it's become more of a to a like the thing is, even when the infrastructure wasn't that good, right? There was just this culture of, this English culture, this pop culture, and the rock culture, right? It was so much like our parents' generation. They were so much into when, like, my parents loved their share of, Hindi songs. Like, they love, they love Lata Mangeshkar. They love all these classics, right?
Mm,
But at the same time, the rock scene back in the 80s, right? In the 90s, like this is like we're talking about pre, how do I say it? There's this thing where in 1991 or 1994, like India underwent globalization, right?
mm,
Pre-globalization, like there was such a rock scene in this part of the country, right? I think in terms of that, it's just realizing its potential. So I don't know much about, if it's just that the government here it's so whack. I shouldn't say this, but uh, government in general is a little corrupt back home, right? Even you agree to an extent.
mm, mm,
But here, because the farther you are from the center, the lesser the center officials look after you, right?
mm,
Look into you.
mm,
So taking bribes and doing all this thing is just so much more common that what is supposed to be for development always goes like that. And that's just really sad to see. Like it's that contrast between, the very corrupt officials who should be governing the place properly
mm,
versus the people who are actually so warm.
mm,
It's just very contrasty, I would say. And the thing is, when I was a lot of us are in Australia as well, actually. It's just that we stay so well hidden that, unless a few of my friends are there actually.
mm.
So, and even that sister of mine, right? She recently moved to
Oh,
Newcastle in Northern Australia, right? There's a city. So,
Newcastle. Yeah, east. Yeah, maybe I think Newcastle is about 2 hours north of Sydney.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so she just went there around 5, 6 days ago. She just landed there.
Mm,
So for masters and all. So in terms of that, yeah, I would say we are pretty spread out as well, and I would say we're very low key, so it's difficult. And I had told you right this when we were in Malaysia, the food culture. It's a very unpopular opinion. I know you love the food.
mm,
I don't. I think it's very sweet and a little oily.
mm,
I think it's personal preference, but the one thing was that the culture and the vegetables, right? Like vegetables just sound so much more like so much basic in terms of what I'm saying, but the culture was just so similar, right? The words that we used, you know, the words, the facial features, like of course that's there, but the culture, the food items, the way we prepare things was just so similar that even I was shocked by it, like to the extent,
mm,
like there were these few items that I thought were only available in my part of the place, but I go to Southeast and all, and it's available everywhere. So that's something as well. And I think a part of exploring other cultures is that, right? Realizing the differences and realizing the common things we have. So, like you said, again, a learning experience.
It's pretty fascinating. So today we've really covered a lot of topics. We've covered life in Malaysia, life in UK, um, Shillong, different cultures, different beliefs, some hobbies and passions. Your masters of science, which you're studying for,
And an invitation that you must come.
and a very kind invitation. So thank you so much, brother. So we're nearing the end of this little chat, but normally at the very end of the chat, I ask one question which I don't ever tell anyone this question. So you have to have the answer on your feet. And it's a very simple question. It's for anyone that is listening to this insightful podcast and learning interesting stuff that you have to share. What is one piece of advice that you'd maybe give to them that maybe that they can ponder over?
I would say that uh, um, this was a thing that I was telling throughout the length of this conversation, right, from time to time, which was how I had never been outside the country, but then when I did, and I learned a few things. So, uh, more than a question or anything, it's this thing. this advice of go outside of your comfort zone, go explore other places, go to other places. And it's not just, exploring culture, exploring people, in terms of, like how they are as personalities. But the a very underrated thing is the process of getting there. Like I remember when I first went anywhere, right? Um, just the fact that I had to take a flight from here to my hometown to Delhi, from Delhi to there. And it was my first time in the international departure area, going through customs, immigration, and the whole process was such a fun experience. And I think all of us listen to all these motivational podcasts, and they keep saying it's not about the destination, but it's the journey that's the destination, right? And I think that's very perfectly encapsulated. So I would say, uh, of course, look at the journey, appreciate that journey, look at the destination, and also appreciate the destination. So, like, you can say, appreciate everything because you never know. Like, for me, I never thought about it much until, it stopped happening to me. And that's when I started remembering. So you can call it fond memories. I
Mhm,
think that's the thing, man. The
mhm,
journey and the destination, both equally important.
mhm. That you've put that piece of advice so eloquently and articulately, and I think when you're talking about seeking discomfort, this is just proof of what happens when you kind of seek discomfort. I before years ago, the younger me never would have talked to strangers. We had a conversation, sought discomfort by speaking with a stranger, and it's blossomed into a wonderful connection that we've maintained all these years. Literally just
Yeah.
starting a conversation with a stranger on a plane, and it turned into a wonderful relationship.
But there's this thing about you that I would like to tell the viewers, like, I don't know how you were 4 or 5 years back. Like you say, right, that you weren't like this. I find it hard to believe because I think that for people to do something like this, like how you're doing, right, it's not something that people develop. I think they have it inside them. The developing part is, just pulling it out from inside someone to the exterior. So I think you've always been like this because had you not been like this, I don't think we would have had a conversation 3 years ago. We wouldn't be having this awesome conversation. And after you sent me the link of your channel, right, I checked out a few other podcasts on all the informational things. So I would say that whether you're doing an amazing job, like the information is awesome, and just the vibes of the whole conversation is awesome as well. So please continue what you're doing, and the invitation is still on. And just a great job overall, man. Congratulations.
Brother, thank you so much for the wonderful praise. You're really showering me with praise, so I'm very humbled and very appreciative. Once again, same for you. You come to NCR, happy to host you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to have a
No worries,
conversation.
man.
And I'm
Anytime.
100% sure the people that are watching this will learn something new about this conversation, and that's the whole goal of this, just to share some knowledge.
Anytime, man. Anytime. You're doing a great job. Keep
Thank you
going,
so
and I
much,
think
brother.
you'll do even better.
Maybe even a part two someday. But
For sure, for sure.
Rahul, thanks so much. We'll keep in touch and thanks for being here, brother.
Yeah, yeah. Yep,
Peace.
yep.